We had a quorum at the point of time. Now have FCR 2019-20 and urge the Finance Committee to approve the Pt2 meeting on April 26, 2019 on the Pt2 2018-1943 proposal on the establishment of agriculture park in Kutong South and upgraded it to a part of the 47 RO entitled Establishment of Agriculture Park in Kutong South Phase 1 Category A at estimated cost of $176.6 million in modern-day prices, and the retention of the remainder of 471 RO in Category B. And while the PwC spent 2 hours 22 minutes scrutinizing the first proposal, and I'm the director and CEO of the Welling Insurance Group, and also the director of the Welling Insurance Company and the Welling Life Insurance Company. To answer your questions, we have the Principal Assistant Secretary from the Food and Health Bureau and his team. First, Mr. KK Kwok, 5 minutes. For this agriculture park, well, back in 2018, at the Food and Health Service panel, we conduct a site visit there. Well, the whole agriculture park is not really help the existing farmers. Currently, a lot of the farmers are still living and farming there, in which they live next to the farming plot, wait for the daily operation or a natural disaster claim. The farmer can actually attend to their fields quickly, while the agriculture part is actually evicting them. Well, they're now forbidden to stay near their farm, and it was mentioned in the paper. You set up a basic lodging, which are just very basic rooms, and often overlook their need of setting up structure for storing their farm tools, and ask him to put in a special storage space, and each time they have to move these tools from the storage. Well, only someone who doesn't know how to farm can come up with this. Well, you simply just cover your head. You fail to think in the farmer's shoes. They live and farm there. Besides myself, the family members will also need to tend the fields. I said so many times, for those who are already residing there, please let them stay. How could you locate them to the public housing the miles away and just come back to farm once in a while? Well, maybe the high officials are so used to this kind of hobby farming in Yunlong for their small plot of land at their leisure, because these commercially operated farms will look after for you. It's really just for fun. You can't do it for a living. And for the irrigation method proposed, not consider the need for their crops. While they're using natural irrigation, the government claimed that you want to get rid of this. They want to use the new technology, let's say by hydroponics. Well, you're asking them to switch their farming method. Why? The first priority of the agriculture part is to ask them to abandon their practice and to kick them out. Well, is that just another way to intimidate them? So is you serious about the agriculture part? Why do you fail to consider the farmers' genuine interests? Director? And for the Dr. Kwok's question, and for the farmers affected by the phase 1 of the agri park, Well, we will not resume the existing farmhouse. They live near either phase 1 or they don't live in the community at all. But for the phase 1, the farmers are not affected. We're not locating them because they don't live in the area. And for the lodging and storage units, we've been communicating with the farmers, and they see the facility justified. And if they need to stay there, they will provide them basic lodgings. On one hand, one of the key objectives of the agri-park is to help the existing farmers to enhance their farming technique and also switch to greener farming methods. Thus, for those tenants in the agri-park, will provide more technologically advanced facilities. And it depends on the suitability of the facilities. We will also provide assistance so as to conserve water and power, so as to cut down their costs and enhance the cost efficiency. Mr. Edichi, 5 minutes. Thank you, Chairman. I heard from the Director of Agriculture claiming there's no dislocation. I wonder if you've been dreaming for too long and just woke up. How could you be not aware that just for the purpose of the road into the agri park, you already have evict tenants and you led to loss of farmland, and the Chilking farmers will need to seek alternative sites so the eviction does take place. Now that this agri-park will lead to dislocation of farmers, well, it's already funny enough that the agri-park, in terms of policy, at least in phase 1, you're supposed to settle the farmers affected by the NWNT and other development projects. That's why we go back to Dr. Kwok's question, why are you treating the farmers so badly? Why? The family farming is the dominant mode of farming in Hong Kong. And the family farming, one of the characteristic is you're living near the farm. And now that you're providing the so-called basic logic in agri-park, so why can't we improve on that so to provide a more comfortable living environment for farmers? Or the farmers deserve such a low existence in the eyes of the government. It's just like the factory workers in the mainland, in which the major vegetable farms in China, they only live in sheds or tin sheds. Well, it was so hot during the day. Well, it was so hot during the day and couldn't sleep at night. I don't quite understand your logic. And you claim the agri-park, the government is serious on it. Okay, we'll try not to get in the way. When it comes to details, when we are using it to resettle the farmers dislocated by the NWNT and other new development projects, why, on come to accommodation, do you have to subject them such maltreatment? You only force them. That will provide you a public housing in Shangshui, while in agri-park I'm giving you 160 square foot basic lodging facilities. Why do you have to break it up like that? Because you could have all the total control, have the ownership, and also take part in the farming scheme. You have the tenancy. What are you afraid of? Director, what are you so afraid of? Are you afraid that you're being swallowed? Why couldn't be entitled to a better living? I said of the affected farmers, none of their domestic structure are affected. Of course there are. Well, for the purpose of role resumption, they're effective. Well, these are not farmers. There are 3 families or households. Well, they'll be evicted. Well, so those living occupied are not humans. Okay, let's not go into semantics, Chairman. So what are you so afraid of? Are you afraid that the NWNT farmers are able to live better to actually occupy the land? Mr. Chu, please don't ask. I just asked you what considerations they have. Well, are you accusing him of being afraid? Of course, he said no. Well, he just said he's not afraid. Well, just suppose you can upgrade the living conditions. So what were your considerations, Director? I'd like to clarify. I never said that. And on living on the farm, first the agri-park is only of a certain size. We try to utilize the space for agricultural purpose, as we know that the farmers may need to stay overnight occasionally to tend the crops or the vegetable fields. So with that, we provide this basic logic. As for accommodation, if someone affected by this program, the government is offering other options. Well, Chairman, have you noticed what he said? Well, lodging and accommodation. So you really talking about the differentiating the two. Well, Chairman, do you know the difference?
Well, you have the lodging facilities. By that I mean you allow them to stay on the farm. Mr. Ho, 5 minutes. Chairman, we asked the SAR administration to set up an integrated agricultural village. We like to have the agriculture concentrated in a certain district, thus releasing the land for other purposes. And this agri-park makes it impossible for the poultry farms to be put there, and in the poultry and husbandry are scattered all over Hong Kong, and these people are still facing a lot of anxieties. I understand that the legislative amendments are coming in relation to poultry farming. I understand Mr. Pt2's concerns, and it is always one of the skills to stir up the confrontations. I don't really want to see too much political confrontation there. And in relation to the road access, there are different comments. For people who are living there and for people who are not living there, they find that there are improvements that can be made. I think we have to think about this. If we can maintain the existing scale of production, are we going to have a promising future? I think we have to amalgamate the traditional farming and the new farming practices. So, Director, I think you have to explain to the public in the agri-farm, there are people living there. How are you going to deal with the houses there? And for people who are moving in, they didn't have the small houses there, the 400 square feet small houses. Why don't you let them have the land to build the small houses? I hope that the SAR government will understand that. Third, now for the lodging facilities, are they tin huts? Are they really stuffy kind of accommodation? Are you making the living conditions so unpleasant that they don't want to live there? If people listen to Mr. Chu, people will get the perception that the lodging is going to be exceedingly unpleasant. When applications are made, the government will allocate a unit for the farmers. If they have a larger farmland, they can apply for 3, 4 or more lodging facilities. They can have more storage facilities. I think the SL government should explain to the public everything about the facilities in a way that these projects will not be smeared. And I hope even if this paper is passed, it may give rise to a very, very negative perception. Director, for the affected farmers, I must emphasize again that for those who were affected by the first phase, none of them have any structures that affected. If the structures were affected in the first phase, people do have the policy to accommodate them. In the agri park, most of the farmland should be used for farming purposes. If we link the two, if we conflate accommodation or habitation and farming together, it would be against the principle of developing the agri park. So I'd like to emphasize that the development of agri park means that we would use the farmland for the purposes of farming as far as possible. We appreciate that operationally the farmers may need to stay overnight to keep an eye on the farm produce, and they may have to get up early to look after the farm produce. So we do provide a 15 square meters or 160 square feet lodging facility, and in each farm we have the storage unit for them, about 80 square feet. So the farmers will have sufficient facilities for them to store the farming implements, and the farmers and the family members would have the lodging available for them to stay over. Mr. Ho, turn with the mic, please. My question remains unanswered, Chairman. Is the living condition so bad? The size is important, but it's not the only important thing. The environment is also important, Director. In the first phase, we're going to have the temporary facilities. For permanent facilities, they will become available in the second phase. I mentioned the 160 square feet, and we would have sufficient space for them to put the beds there. And also the insulation materials. Would you press the button again to be fair? Mr. Ray Chan, 5 minutes. Chairman, this project before us is the agricultural park in Kutong South. One of the most important reasons is that in the NT northeast, a lot of farmland will be resumed, and they are given the choice to move to this agricultural park. The complaints division has a case visit. Dr. Zheng and Dr. Ching Chung Tai and myself have been to Kutong and Fanling. We've been visiting the affected farmers. Some of them are evicted. Some of them face the problem of rehabilitation. I'm sure that members are prepared to share with the director. I'm not sure whether the director has got a briefing from his colleagues. We went to the field, and the farmers told us that the bone of contention is the problem of habitation on the farm. They are not just making money they're on the farm, their whole life, their whole career lies in the farm. Now we're talking about the habitation on the farm. According to the administration, there is a difference between habitation and staying over. Staying over, do you restrict the number of days that they stay over? We chatted with the farmers. They would get up at 5 a.m. To do the seeding. They have the farm fenced off, and the butterflies and the bees will not do the pollination, and they have to do it manually at 5 at the crack of dawn. If you assign them to Pochette Wool Estate, at what time do you expect them to get up? Will there be any public transport to take them there in the early morning? And at night time, they have to get rid of the bugs because they are not using chemicals. And when the sun is beating down, they have to take a rest. And by 4, when the sun is less ferocious, they come out and work again. So they live their whole life. They're in the farm. They have the meal, and after meal they carry on working, and they thereafter they get rid of the bugs. If there is no habitation on the farm, it would be impossible for them to carry on their activities. I'm not sure whether the director understands the practice, their mode of operation. It's not the case that they need to stay over certain times of the week. They spend a good part of the year on the farm. They would start at 5 a.m. Till 9 p.m. and so on. The habitation, this may not be the residential address for the farmers. They cannot register themselves as a voter. If you assign them a PRX unit, they probably wouldn't stay long in these units. They went so far as to say that they don't need the PRX unit because they are living their life on the farm. I don't know how you discuss with them. Say, a farmer, you have a lodging of 160 square feet. They have a whole family living there. If they have more fields, and would they have more lodging facilities for the mother, for the daughter, and so on? Director, Chairman. By definition, I mentioned this and I say again, the whole purpose of the agri-park is for activities relating to farming. We understand that the farmers, in the course of the farming activities, may need to stay over on the farm to keep an eye on the vegetable farm, for instance. So this lodging facility is intended for farming activities, and this is not to be confused with the habitation dwellings, because if they stop the farming activities and they live there, well, they can surrender them. If we define that as for residential dwelling, there may be problems. So the lodging facility, as we said, it must have something to do with the farming activities. Will you press the button again? Mr. Yu Xi-wing? Chairman, thank you. I am reading the paper. This Phase 1 agri-park has 40 farms. And these are the farmers affected by the developments. Will the 40 farms be enough to address the problem? If they're not enough, are you going to have the Phase 2? Have you got the land set aside for Phase 2? And what if there is surplus farmland? Will you open it up for application? And there are 55 objections Are they in relation to the issue of habitation on the farm? Are they raising the objection on the basis of this? Or is it the case that the objection is about the 900 meters access road? What are what is the focus of their objection? I think if it's only when we understand these can we address the problem. For the agri park, other than farming, if the farm owner were to open up the site for visits by schools or for experiments, experimental farming by the students, or for selling the farming produce, would that be allowed under this scheme, Director? Chairman, according to our latest information, in the first phase, there are 15 farmers who are adversely affected. From our communication with them, they did express some misgivings at the beginning, and now the affected farmers are in discussion with us about the whole design and the mode of operation, the management, the rental, and so on. We have been having a lot of communication. So as of now, their misgivings have been assuaged. So, like we said earlier on, when they have to move, we will try to have the seamless arrangement. And also we have the lodging facilities and the storage units available for them. If they welcome people to visit them and to purchase their produce, and it is a common occurrence that people may visit and purchase the farm produce, and this would be allowed. In fact, we would encourage them to do so, and so that more people would understand the operation of the farmers and what they produce. Mr. Yu, Chairman, for these 15 affected farmers, would there be special treatment for them under reasonable circumstances? Will you entertain their idea of being allowed to habitate on the farm? For the others, they would only be allowed to stay over where the circumstances warrant. They are affected farmers. Would there be any special treatment to deal with this extraordinary situation? Director, I'd like to say again that for these 15 farmers, their farmland has been affected, but their residential dwellings have not been affected because they're not living there. They're not living there at all. You're talking about the 3 farmers who are affected by the 900-meter road. There are 3 structures that were living there, they were residing there, but they were not farmers. The Lands Department has been in contact with the relevant individuals. If they have accommodation problem, the government does have an established mechanism to offer rehousing and compensation. So this is not a question of habitation on the farm, not for the 15 farmers, no. It's all turned now, Mr. Attitude, 4 minutes. Mr. Yu, thank you very much for raising the concern, talking about the habitation on the farm. I think mainly one of the purposes of the agri park is to accommodate the farmers who are affected in the northeast NT. The farmland has been resumed, and the houses have been resumed, and the government is telling them that, look, you can move to the agri park. But you have to move to a public rental housing unit, and you're working on the field, but you have to move to a rental housing. In Northeast NT, people get up at the crack of dawn to till the land, and they're living by the side of the field, and they're habitating there. The director is telling them that it's okay for you to stay over. I let you have this 160 square foot lodging facility. You have to pay rent for it, but you still have to live in the public rental housing. That's where the ridiculous situation lies. They're not asking for the rental housing. They said that they want to farm the land and they want to live by the side of the field. The question is very simple. As long as you let them have a reasonable structure for them to live in, then there will not be so much resentment from residents in Northeast NT. Mr. Stephen Ho said that we should have an amalgamation of the conventional and the new farming practices. I agree with them, Mr. Ho. The question is, they have been deprived of a choice for the farming enterprises may have the arrangement for them, but these affected farmers in the Northeast NT, I think you have to observe the practices, the family practices they have been observing.
Now you are forcing them to follow your rules of the game. Just now, Mr. Ho asked you. Now, for the lodging facilities, are they not as bad as that I'd imagine? Director, so it would be like the modular housing at Penny's Bay, or it's like Lei Yue Mun village or holiday homes. They are just temporary structures. So this is your positioning. Agri Park is for farming enterprises. The owners of such enterprises won't farm themselves. They may even hire foreign farmers. So this is the only model that you want to adopt. But Mr. Ho says that it should be a merger of new and old farming models, and different farmers have different needs. So why don't you give them a choice? Chairman, my question is very simple. Actually, I'm making a lot of concessions. So you own the land and you lease the land to them, but you should at least give them a choice. A lodging facility of 160 square feet is a choice, and then you can have a bigger lodging of 400 square feet. I have answered this question many times, and I would like to say it once more. For the agri park land, is mainly used for farming. Chairman, then I have an arithmetic question. Now for a farm, well, you are overrunning. Maybe you should press the button again. Dr. Zheng Chongtai, 5 minutes. Thank you, Chairman. I would like to follow up on Northeast NT. These farmers are forced to leave the farmlands. Yes, I understand that we are talking about the establishment of an agri park in Kutong South. But at Kutong North, there are some farmers. And they are mainly farming vegetables for sale locally. The government is thinking of setting up an agri park, which is a merger of old and new farming models. So have you been thinking about any vegetable marketing plans? Do you have a goal that is perhaps at least 30% of the vegetables in Hong Kong are grown here? If that is the case, you may not be able to accept the old farming model. But if that is not the case, if the agri-park is just for weekend farmers, then for the farmers who were originally farming here, it's unfair to them because now you are changing their lives completely. So for the agri-park, what is the direction? You can't say that is for farming. Well, but these are farmers. They are just not adopting your model of farming. Well, for the establishment of the agri-park, our major goal is to enhance the local agricultural techniques, and we want to introduce technologies, and we also want to adopt a modern management approach. Now, for traditional farming, our local farmers mainly use traditional methods to farm. Then their farmlands are relatively small. They don't use a lot of machines or technologies. So if they join the agri-park, we would help these traditional farmers. Now, for example, we would help them use more farming machines, and in terms of management and operation, we would help them do it environmentally, and their annual produce capacity can be increased. And we can also provide a more suitable environment for organic farmers. And thirdly, we can introduce agricultural technologies, some more advanced ones. For example, some may be using aquaculture, and they can do this indoor or outdoor, and they can also try vertical farming. So we hope that the producers can be more diversified and their yield can be enhanced. So we would like to encourage diversified models of farming. Yes, I've heard your directions. Well, for aquaculture, it has been used in Hong Kong, hydroponics. So now you have several directions. But there were farmers living here. I'm very concerned about their daily lives because their lives are intertwined with farmlands. But now they cannot live on their farmlands. They cannot farm and live at the same place. But you have several directions. You told me just now. If these farmers have to go to their farmland, it may take them 2 to 3 hours for commuting, and they have to work on their farmland for 18 hours. Well, we don't really want to touch on aquaculture because this may lead to a lot of controversies. So this is something that you want to see. You do not allow the farmers to live there, and they have to spend 3 to 4 hours a day on commuting. Can you pay them $30,000 or $40,000 a month to do that? We really hope that in the agri-park, the land can be used mainly for farming. Well, for phase 1, as I said just now, well, for the affected farmers, they actually don't live in the affected area. We will be providing lodging for them, so they don't really have to commute so much between their farmland and their residences. If they have to stay overnight, they have a facility there. So all these facilities are associated with their farming activities. Mr. Zhang Hong, 5 minutes. Chairman, I haven't pressed my button. I don't understand why your name is here. Maybe you just touched it accidentally. Mr. Ho Chunyin, I think both the secretary and the director would have to tell us the directions of the agri-park. Now, if there's no agri-park, I believe actually these farmers do not own their farmlands. If you do not establish an agri-park, the farmers may still face a lot of problems. Maybe the landowner would try to kick them out, and then they would have to seek the help of district councillors, or the landowners would damage the farmland so that they can convert it into a parking lot. So we think that the government should really formulate an agriculture policy, and you should distribute farming lots to them in a fair and just manner. Now, if we do not allocate public housing units to the farmers, then they won't have a place to live in the future when they get old. And the government at that time would have to provide public housing to them. So we really have to talk to the government about the rules of the game so that the farmers can enjoy equal opportunities. I understand that some members want to adhere to their old way of living. As Dr. Chang said just now, farmers lead a very difficult life. So can the government help them? So we are not in the Qing dynasty. The farmers shouldn't be asked to toil on farmlands all their lives. So in the agri-park, we really have to think very carefully, and lodging or accommodation is something we have to think about. Well, you mentioned a farmer's square, so I don't know whether you will go in that direction. And how about freezer? And why do we insist on having a wider road? Because we need sufficient space in the future for development. As Mr. Chu said just now, or sometimes Mr. Chu is right, if the farmers still use old farming methods in the new agri-park, maybe a lot of opportunities will be missed. So I would like to tell farmers and the lay people, when making a decision, a lot of factors have to be taken into account. So, Dr. Leung Siu-Fai, you really have to explain to Hong Kong people in a clearer manner. Well, some members of the public may think that you have fallen into the trap of some other members. Dr. Leung has not really addressed my concern. For the basic lodging, is it really a poor facility? Is it really hot and stuffy? Well, according to Eddie Chu's sophistry, people would think that the farmers would have to suffer a lot. So please explain clearer. CEDD, for our lodging facility, as the member said just now, is basically like the anti-epidemic lodging. We would ask the contractor to enhance the insulation. So our contractor would make proposals concerning such facilities, and we provide with basic utilities, for example, water supply, electricity. You can there's a pantry, and also you can take a shower in there. If farmers want to install air conditioners, they are free to do so. Dr. Cheng Chung Tai. I think we are talking about two major issues here. For NT Northeast, some farmers are forced to relocate because of the redevelopment, so they would really have to revamp their lives. This is a problem that the Development Bureau would have to face. And now we're talking about agri-park. The government did promise them that they would have such a choice. That is, they can go back to the agri-park. And this is their livelihood. They do farming all their lives. So that's why I asked you about the design of the agri-park. You should take into consideration their original lifestyles. Earlier on, I've asked you this quite indirectly, but you have to tell us what's the purpose of setting up an agri-park. Now, maybe you can tell me that, well, there are too many people acting as weekend farmers. They just do farming leisurely, and all the farmlands in the new territories are split and scattered. So that's why you are establishing an agri-park. Well, then why don't you ask people to farm on rooftops? So you must have an objective for setting up the agri-park. Well, don't talk about Kutong North anymore. Now I ask you this. For this agri-park, it would be of a bigger scale, so it's like an enterprise. So how would you affect farmers to farm at agri-park? How much would you be paying them? Have you thought about the pay level? Well, for the agri-park, our major goal is to enhance agricultural productivity. So for the farmers that join the agri-park, they have to reach certain levels. Of course, they may be farming different things and they may adopt different farming methods. So there are different productivity goals. So this is not a place for leisure farming. This is really for agricultural production. And the farmlands will be leased to farmers or farming operators. As to what people they will hire to farm, this is their own business. Then I'm a bit worried. Then this may become a hub for illegal immigrant farmers. So, well, let me cite an example. If you lease this place to Quinoa, and then they hire farmers from the mainland, then you are not nurturing agriculture in Hong Kong, because this is Hong Kong land, but you do not ensure the livelihood of local farmers. Well, they can hire two farmers from the mainland, just paying them $8,000 a month. Well, this is a project to help Hong Kong agriculture. So how can you ensure that local agriculture can be developed and local farmers can be helped? You just give people an impression that you are trying to phase out local farmers. Well, the agri-park is to help the local farming community to improve. So we will have a set of guidelines in the future, and that will there will be some admission criteria. Well, the basic criteria are they must be Hong Kong people or they must be Hong Kong companies. As for the details, we will be setting up a committee which will provide opinions for the operation of the agri-park. Mr. Ray Chen, I would like to follow up on my earlier questions concerning lodging facilities. So a farmer would lease a farmland And if he leases a bigger piece of land, then he can have a bigger lodging facility. This morning, we visited some farmers that are affected by the Northeast anti-development. Actually, their whole family is working on the farmland. So would the lodging facility be big enough for their whole family? Are there conditions imposed if people want to use the lodging facility? I've heard that they cannot use open fire to cook. You may be able to use an electric cooker, but you're saying that this is not a home, so they cannot use open fire. So are there such limitations? Well, for lodging facility, our present thinking is like this. Now, if a farmland is big enough, then it would be allocated a lodging facility. As for the storage unit, we will at least provide one storage unit to each farmer. And if the farmer has actual needs and he wants to apply for another lodging facility, then we will look at the supply and demand situation then. As for cooking with open fire, yes, Mr. Chen is right, because in phase one, these facilities are temporary. We have to follow the fire safety rules. Well, they can cook, but they cannot use open fire.
Well, for phase two, where we provide long-term accommodation, where we can consider will permit open fire cooking. Well, my clock has stopped counting, but I still want to pursue. Well, it's really a matter for definition. On one hand, you let them cook. They have a family would eat there. Well, for 160 square foot, it's just like a box. We have the children doing homework, and we keep a dog. We're probably not realistic. Well, the government is so obsessed about the definition, you can't call it an accommodation. However, due to your farming needs that you must stay overnight or stay later or get up early, then they will let you use it. Well, what you're expecting to be a seasonal instead of a year-round pattern, or which most of the days that they will stay there, which become a de facto accommodation. So maybe you can improve the facilities to help them. Director? Well, based on this farming need, we'll provide a basic lodging facilities. So I must stress that this is not accommodation. Well, according to Mr. Chan, well, if we need to be there, stay there every night, at this stage, will not restrict how many nights you could stay there or how many days in a year. So long as it can meet the operation need, we will not interfere. Just now we heard from Director that you need to meet certain criteria to become a tenant agriculture park. For example, technological enhancement or productivity target. Is that some kind of a lab or to provide an option for those affected by the NWNT development? In Para 6B, you claim that the farmers displaced by government development projects implemented within the same time frame of AgriPark. Well, would they need to comply with the tech enhancement and also productivity target? Well, it's really for the sake of modernization of agriculture, where the AgriPark idea is conceived. Well, after accommodating the farms affected by the displacement, the second priority will be for those who farmers affected by government development projects. And if there is still space available, we'll accept new applications. But for all applicants, we hope to set up a productivity target under mutual agreement. When they first move in, we'll give them a transition period. Let's say for the first tenancy, they're not able to enhance their technology. We'll give them some allowance in that. There's only one member present, and members who would like to speak, please come down. Mr. Pt2, 3 minutes. So I will still ask about the basic logic. So why couldn't you let the farmers to live a better life? That's a simple question. The director insisted that the land is mainly reserved for agriculture. Of course we know that. I did the math. For a farmer, let's say about 20 or 22,000 square foot, about 3 taochong. And for a basic logic, 160 square meters. It's just 0.7% of the total. If the basic logic is about 400 square foot, that's just 1.8%. But for 0.7 or 1.8%, at least you have more than 88% of both used for farming. So that's main is chiefly for farming. So what's really the difference? So you just been arguing that as a farming you only 160 square feet is enough, 200 is too generous. Well, 200 square foot would be immoral to Hong Kong people. This logic is nonsense. The second point, I don't understand Mr. Ho Chun Yin's concern or whether I misspoke. Well, I have compromised a lot on this. I have a actual proposal. Well, Mr. Ho said, Stephen Ho said, the farmers should listen to me. Otherwise, you will lose your public housing unless you face another eviction. Well, Chairman, for the NWNT, well, they have another option. For those, there are dozens or so farmers that have yet to accept the government special farming rehabilitation program. Well, first, they need to give up their public housing with housing option. Then they will rent the agri park and the basic lodging. When you stop farming, you stop leasing the land, then the Development Bureau will reinstate your right to public housing. This means you're not wasting the public resources. And while the farmers is farming at the agri park, they're also able to live in dignity in agri park. For 160 versus 400 square foot, well, for the director arguing with us is rather despicable. My proposal is that you give them those who would like to rehabilitate their farming so that they might live better while they're in agri park, and when they leave, they can just return to public housing. What's wrong with that? Director, I still think that the basic lodging and the residential issues of the affected households will be dealt separately. The government has a mechanism to deal with the housing issue. If they choose to engage farming in the agri park, we'll try to provide the infrastructure related to farming, for example, basic lodging and storage units. First round, Dr. Fernando Chia. Well, this one, the Public Complaints Division, myself, Mr. Pt2, and Mr. Rachel and Dr. Cheng Chung Tai have went to the WNT to visit some farmers, and one of the problem is about identify suitable land for farming rehabilitation, agricultural rehabilitation. Well, the government had refused to rehouse them based on their living on the farm concept. And some of the farmers on this spot have showed us their farm plots. They're growing. They tend to flower in the morning. Well, since organic farming and to prevent the pests, they have put up a protective film on top to prevent pest. Well, in this way, they're actually doing artificial pollination. They actually use in order to grow this zucchini. Well, actually, they need to work from after 5 in the morning, and before 8 o'clock, they need to complete the whole procedure. They still do need to do the harvesting and watering. Well, if they need to go and sell, they need to go start selling at the stall. When it comes to afternoon, they will get a break. And for the afternoon, when it is the most sunny, they may not work. For those times, they may do some maintenance and repairs. And when they get to the evening, they return to the farmland to tend their crops. For example, trimming and plowing and fertilizing and weeding. Later in the evening, we need to do fertilizing and do a pesticide and so on. And some and well, they have loofah plants that need to be pollinated at night. By the time they finish, it's really late at night. Well, for this kind of traditional agriculture production, some people still depend on it, and it's quite popular. Well, they also can use the agricultural waste as fertilizer, which is quite environmentally friendly as a whole. Well, this lifestyle cannot continue at agri-park because the way to live at the farm, according to the director, they must be dealt with separately. Well, not all types of agriculture require you to live on the farm, but there is a group of farmers in Hong Kong is currently having this lifestyle. And also, a key component of our locally homegrown produce. Well, Director, would you admit that such lifestyle exists and also their own merits? And whether this kind of lifestyle could not be accommodated in the agri-park or in any kind of agricultural land. So as long as there is development, then all the agricultural rehabilitation would not allow this living in a farm lifestyle. Well, on the living on the farm problem, well, we discussed this in 438. Well, the question has been repeated ad infinitum. Well, government, please be frank, we're going to change your position. It's pointless to keep asking the same question. I don't think the agri-park should have more than one issue. I suppose that I understand that you got question after going on a site visit. However, you can't keep asking the same question over an hour. Your government also repeating the same answer. I don't think that's constructive. I'm only for the first round. Well, after this round, well, can you reset the clock? Director. Well, our considerations have been clear. We see that the land in the agri-park should mainly be used on agriculture-related use. The accommodation cannot resolve through the agri-park. Well, to answer Dr. Cheng's question, well, according to Dr. Cheng, well, for the farmer living near the farm, of course, it is very real. And from his perspective, well, living near the farm will really convenient for commuting and tending his farm. While in Hong Kong, land is an acute shortage. If we manage to locate a site for an agri-park, we'll try our best to devote much of the site for agri-related purposes. We also understand the farmers will need to wake up very early or really late in the evening. That's why we have the basic lodging facilities. But for accommodation, you really cannot address this through the agri-park. Mr. Holden, you have 5 minutes. So referring to the arrangement outlined in the paper, so this agriculture park have been procrastinated or germinated for a long time because just now Stephen Ho had stated clearly for the farmers they're mostly supportive. And from the paper, well, when a consultation in North District Councils back in 2017, it's been 3 years. If we can go forward, well, as one of the key measures under the new agricultural policy, I think it's better if we forge ahead. And some of the farmers, they will see that they really see the imminent need for the agri-park for their support. Well, in the paper, it's mentioned that you have built on one main trunk road, long access road. They may use the large trucks into the area. Well, according to your assessment, was this road able to cope with this? Well, make sure it is wide enough or able to accommodate these goods vehicles into the park. I would like to listen from the Bureau Director. Let me talk about the road. It's really to tie in with the agri-park development. Well, to farmers, it will provide it with a standard road while transporting farming machinery or their crops. The trucks getting in and out we should make sure that we're able to handle the transport requirements. Instead of the road design, and how do we make sure we can dovetail with the farm operations? Definitely is beneficial. Next, Mr. Shu Kachin, 5 minutes. I only have one question round, so please put up with me. In paragraph 3 of the document, the administration claimed that basic lodging cannot be used to provide for residential purposes and only provide 15 square meters. And for second phase, they will build more permanent lodging units. Well, Chairman said we should not keep beating on the residential issue. Well, that's the biggest issue. Well, in last February 28, I've been following the Food and Health and Hygiene panel for a site visit at Chew King. The villagers have raised this to us. Well, and not satisfied that the Chew King Road project have not failed to, but public opinion have destroying environment and evicting the villagers. And second part, also the question of living on the farm. Well, the chairman have issued a lot of reminders on that. However, there's a loose end that while we were turning down the request to live on the farm, they will provide basic lodging and storage units. They wouldn't tell us how the rent level will be determined. Why wouldn't provide for accommodation in phase 1? Because the farms are used to living near the farm. There's no way for them to live far away from the farm. Even the Bureau will provide permanent lodging units in phase 2. Well, What's so hard about building a more resident permanent housing in phase 1 besides claiming there's a land shortage? And what's the size of each unit and how much is the rent? Can you tell us, Director? Of the 40 basic lodging are really accommodation is just a basic lodging facilities. For phase 1, we hope that we can complete some facilities for the phase 1 farmers. So for phase 1 is really just provisional facilities. For the permanent lodging facilities will be saved for phase 2 because we need to have the welfare infrastructure like sewage. And for those who were affected by the phase 1 of Agri Park, well, the rent will be based on the annual maintenance and repair costs. Well, our preliminary estimate, the annual rent was about $5,000. Based on the current estimates, when it comes to occupation, we'll need to review on that. Well, that's the current estimate of $5,000.
儲物嘅設施咧，
For the storage facilities, it's about $3,000. Mr. Xiu, I still have a bit of time. Will the director explain to us the difference in rent between the lodging and the storage? There is a difference of $1,000. For the lodging, $5,000, storage, $3,000. Mainly because of the different sizes. One is 160 square feet. The storage units are 80 square feet. The materials and also the repair and maintenance are somewhat different. So the pricing is based on the operating costs, and that explains the differential. I'd like to spend my remaining 30 seconds to say that the farmers, many of them have started renting these in the 1940s and 50s. They didn't have to pay any rent. Now they have to shell out additional money, and I think I have to make this clear. Care to respond? Farmers who move into the agri park will be charged according to the course. Dr. N. Zhang, 5 minutes. Director, you said the charges are at cost. How much are they paying at the moment if they want to rent the agri park in future? And if they want to use the lodging facilities, 160 square feet, and the storage units, would they be burdened with very heavy extra expenditure? Director, from our communication with the farmers, if they are using the facilities now, they still have to pay for them. They either pay the owners of the facilities or they have to pay rent in any case. If they don't want them, we don't force them to use them. We did communicate with them. The rental level that we are charging is considered to be acceptable and reasonable to the farming community. We don't want to introduce any facilities for which the rental would be way beyond the affordability. For lodging facilities, for $5,000 per year, it's quite reasonable. It is 160 square feet. Dr. N. Zhang, I think it would be a good thing for Hong Kong to retain the farming activities. For the younger generation will have something to show for them. Also, if I may put a question here, these farmers, do they have their own accommodation? Yes, they do. And you are getting on with the phase 1 of the agri park. You're not going to pull down the structures of the farmers, are you? They haven't been housed yet, have they? Director? For those farmers who are affected by phase 1 of the agri park, they are not living within the parameters of the agri park. As far as we understand, they're living in the villages somewhere nearby. If anybody is affected by the phase 1 agri park in terms of their accommodation, we do offer them a number of choices. They can be rehoused, they can get the compensation from the government. So they can be rehoused or they can be offered compensation. This is what we say. The Development Bureau did announce on different occasions that if accommodation problems arise because of government development, there will be a range of options. Of course, they have to fulfill certain conditions. Dr. Zhou, Chairman, the farmers are living in the vicinity to keep an eye on their crop. I think it is reasonable. Now, you're offering the lodging of 160 square feet. You allow them to stay. How do you work out the size? Is it by head count, Director? If the farm is more than 3 daozhong, we would allocate a lodging facility to them. And this is the basic arrangement. We understand that some farmers might need to have more than one lodging facility, and we will have regard to the situation to see whether there are still enough facilities, and where they're available, we will be flexible. How likely is it that they can get more than one lodging facility if they have the need, Director? As of now, we have been communicating with the dozen or so farmers. They said that one would be enough. Dr. Zhang, for phase 1, assuming that we endorse the funding today, how soon do we expect the work to be completed? Director, according to our timetable, subject to the funding being endorsed, the soonest we can start our work will be Q4 this year. And by the time the farmland is completed, it will be the fourth quarter of 2021. And it won't be until 2023 that the whole phase 1 will be completed. Mr. Jeremy Tam, 5 minutes. Chairman, thank you. From the map of enclosure 1, to gain entrance to this agri park, what kind of road is it? How many lanes? And is it two-way? It is a 7.3 meter 2-lane access road. It is a two-way access road with 1 lane each in each direction. Now, Chuking Road, it is connected with this access road. What about Chuking Road? What sort of road is it? How many lanes are there for traffic? Yes, please. Chuking Road, as it is narrow. It is two-way, 1 lane, and there are lay-bys. In phase 2 of the Agri Park project, we are going to be widening the Chuking Road all the way up to the Fan Came Road. According to the TIA, the road capacity should be enough to cater for the traffic volume. Right, you can cater for the volume for phase 1. Now, my second question then, and let me put it this way. When you're done with phase 1, how long do we have to wait before Chu King Road will be widened to 2-lane? How much widening are you going to do? 2 lanes, 3 lanes, or what? Director? For Chu King Road, we'll widen that to 2 lanes to a 7.3 meter level road. How soon are you going to complete Chu King Road portion? Subject to funding being approved today, how soon are you going to complete the widening of Chu King Road? Director? As I said, Chu King Road doesn't fall within the phase 1. Yes, phase 2. Phase 2, we're doing the detailed design. By the time the design is completed, we'll have to come back to the council for funding approval. We don't have any specific timetable for the time being. The entire project is that we're going to complete phase 1, about 11 hectares of land. We will get a better idea about phase 1 first from the farmers. We'd like to learn from the experience in order to improve the design of phase 2. So we haven't got the specific timetable yet. Mr. Tam, I am none the wiser here. You have to plan here. And Chu King Road is a single-lane, 2-way traffic road. It is indeed a problem, and because the motorists will have to stop at the lay-by to let the oncoming traffic through. Why don't you consider them together? You do the phase 1, and then assuming that you're going to get on with the phase 2, and then you find that Chu King Road cannot be widened, and that would have a bearing on phase 1. Well, according to our initial findings, this can be can be widened. Are you going to evict certain farmers because of the widening work of Chu King Road? Director? Yes, the widening is in phase 2 of the Agri Park. There would be some land resumption exercise. Mr. Tam, I'm looking at the technical point of view. You do the phase 1, you're going to get on with phase 2. By the time you get on with phase 2, you may find that you need to have a massive land resumption. A lot of farmers will be affected, and there will be very strong backlash from the community, and there will be confrontation between the government and the farming community, and you're stuck with it. You have to do it. So I think I would have thought that you should do a better study on Chu King Road to see whether the land can be resumed. Of course, you can resume the land, being government official. You grab the land. This is not something new. But have you ever considered the backlash? Yes, if I may, Chairman, address Mr. Tam's question. Technically, this is feasible. And for phase 1, the number of farmland is rather small, and the timing that they use the road would not be the same as the timing for other traffic. So without widening Chu King Road, we still can cope with the traffic volume. For the widening of Chu King Road, technically this is feasible. As to the alignment, we adopt the same principle that we adopted for phase 1, and that is to minimize the number of people who are affected and minimize the size of the farmland that will be affected. So we will consider the alignment having regard to these principles. Mr. Ray Chen, 3 minutes. Chairman, thank you. For this agri park in Kutong South, I'd like to ask about the traffic arrangement. You are going to build the access roads and footpaths according to the paper. The farmers in Northeast NT can move there. Say, for instance, for Kutong, they will be moved to a Pu estate. To travel from Pu estate to the agri park, will there be any traffic or transport arrangement to take them there? Who's going to take the question, please? There is a minibus route going to Xiangshui, Fanlang, and going through the Tai Tao Lane roundabout and serving people there. And the journey time, it should be very close. I would imagine that it would be 10 minutes or more. It is pretty close. Mr. Chen, I've got some question about the technical details. I'm not going to talk about the living on the farm business. The weather would be playing a crucial role for farming. If there is torrential downpour and the drainage is not good enough, it would affect the crops. And you have all these drainage, storage, irrigation, and water supply and so on, and this is costing you $37 million. Now, for the drainage system, would this be of a scale to cope with the rainfall? What sort of level of rainfall would this be able to cope? Will flooding occur if you have a black storm warning for 2 hours? Will the drainage system cope? And if the rainfall is 100 millimeters, will the drainage system be able to cope? Yes, please. Chairman, our design is to be able to cater for once in 50 years kind of rainfall. Now, in enclosure 1, you get to see the streams, and we're going to clear up the undergrowth near the streams to improve the flow, and we will be able to cope with the once in a 50-year rainfall. Chairman, I don't understand. I quoted the example, 2 hours of black storm rainfall. Is it similar to the once in a 50-year kind of rainfall? Well, what was the point? Turn up the mic. I don't understand once in a 50-year rainfall. Do you have any objectives there, like a black storm warning for how many hours, how many millimeters, and still the drainage can cope? Who can take the question? I don't have the information with me. I can supplement the information from Mr. Chen. Ms. Claudia Mo, 5 minutes. Chairman, definitely this project involves eviction. People are having a good life farming there. Some are there for 10 years or more than 10 years engaging in farming. They've been evicted. I've been to Chu King myself. It is some sheer chance that I visited the farmland in the NT, sheer serendipity. Now you have this project here, and you are creating the agri park. The farmers were asked to be allowed to live there, and you said no, you're just providing the lodging facilities there. Now, the tenancy is only for 5 years, and by the end of the tenancy, will they be evicted again? This question number 1. Second, the official said they will try to minimize the impact on the farmers, they will try to minimize the impact on the land. What can you do to make people feel better. Now people are being evicted, and people are having a lot of resentment, and people have a very bad impression of the government. What else can you do? What else can you say to rectify this unpleasant perception? Director? Chairman, the farmers in Hong Kong are working on land that is rented. When we talk to the farming community, they said that they don't know how long the tenancy will be lasting for, and the owners may discontinue with the tenancy, and they will have to be evicted. The idea of setting up this agri land, the government resumes the land and rent it to the farmers. The farmers are within the parameter will be affected, but the government has given the undertaking that they will be allowed back into the agri park. And through the tenancy agreement, and they will be able to engage in farming activities in a stable environment. Our idea of the tenancy is for 5 years. If they are engaging in active farming, and if they can fulfill the objectives, then they will be renewed for the tenancy for another 5 years.
If the farmers really farm, they can continue to operate in the agri park. The development of agri park have affected some farmers. They may have to move to another part inside the agri park. However, what they get in return is a more stable environment so that they can do long-term farming. I think you're contradicting yourself. On one hand, you are saying that, well, you are leasing land from other people anyway, and the farmland owner may stop the lease and evict you. However, in the future, they have a bigger boss. That is the government, the new landowner. And the government may say that, well, you are not really farming and you are not producing anything. And the government may kick you out and you can't say anything. And for farmland owner, maybe you can sue them at some small tribunal. But I'm talking about eviction by the governments. If you cannot answer my question, I can't do anything about it. But have you set production targets for these farmers? Well, maybe they have to produce certain tons of tomatoes before they can be qualified as farmers. Well, for the production targets, they are not hard targets. We will talk to the farms and farmers. We will look at their production models. We will look at the crops they plant, and then we will agree on some production targets. Now, these targets are important because we want to know whether they are actually farming, so we need targets. And secondly, if there are factors affecting their production, then we can help them through certain means so that they can achieve their goals. But this is not an across-the-board hard target. Evan Young? Well, if my question has already been answered, please tell me so. I want to ask questions about paragraph 15. It's the 57 objections that you received, 2 objectors, and you have arranged objection resolving meetings with them. And 2 objections were withdrawn while 55 objections remain unsolved. And then you have gazetted the scheme, or the road scheme already. So what is happening to the other objections Have you resolved all of them? According to the law, the objections were relayed to the chief executive in council, and a decision was made. The government was authorized to carry on the road works. So according to the procedures, if compensations have to be made, then we will make the compensations. Well, I asked a very specific questions. There are 55 objections. You say in the paper that they remain unresolved. So I would like to know the progress. So how have you handled this 55 objections? Well, after the objection period, we talked to the objectors. We held several meetings, and we tried to resolve the problems. We explained to them the design of the project and what the future aqua park will be like. Well, if minor changes can be made, we will try to do that, but we will have to look at each and every project itself. So after listening to the views, well, as stated in the paper, some objections were withdrawn, but there were still 55 objections after our explanations. And if the government thinks that the original plan is the most appropriate plan, then we would submit the plan and the objections to the Executive Council and see if the in Council authorize us to go on. Well, I want to know about facts. You just explained to me about the procedures. Now, you say that if residents propose certain changes that are appropriate, you will do that, right? So will all these be submitted to the Executive Council for decisions? What have you done? Well, for this particular project, after listening to the views, for example, the views concerning the alignment of the road, well, we think our alignment is the best for the long-term operation of the aqua park. So after listening to the views, we have not amended the alignment. However, for some other projects, after listening to people's views, if we find that there is indeed a need to make changes, we will do that. But for this project, we don't find the changes justified. You say that there are 55 objections that remain unresolved. So the government will not handle them. So you just meet with these people, you listen to their views, and then you won't make any improvements. Is my understanding correct? And after you get the funding from us, you will just follow the government's original plan, right? Well, during the consultation period, we've received views. There were some objections, and we've talked to the objectors. And for some other views, we've looked at them, but we didn't find changes justifiable. So we submitted all the relevant information to the Executive Council for scrutiny. And after the Executive Council looked at them, they have approved our alignments and our plan, which is set out in the paper. Evan Young, 4 minutes. I don't want to dwell on this. However, I want to understand more. So for the objections, have you submitted them to the Executive Council? Yes. So what's the decision of the Executive Council? The Executive Council's decision is that no changes will be made to the plan, and the Executive Council agrees to our original plan. Now, for the 55 objections, In the paper, you say that they remain unresolved. So this is not the whole truth. You're just ignoring these 55 objections, right? Isn't that a more honest way of saying this? Well, here we say that this 55 objections remain unresolved. So we've talked to the objectors. We have discussed, but we cannot resolve their objections. So that's why we say these objections remain unresolved. So this has been your way of doing things. So this is about other people's livelihood, properties, and you can resolve the objections and you just move on, right? Well, we always have a consultation period. We'll listen to views. We will receive objections, and then the relevant government departments will try their best to talk to the objectors and the people who have opinions, and we will try our best to mediate. Well, sometimes mediation works, and sometimes we would listen to such views and make changes to our original plan. But sometimes the objections cannot be resolved. So all these information will be submitted to the Chief Executive in Council for scrutiny. And I would like to ask about the vehicular bridge. You say that the Advisory Committee on the Appearance of Bridges and Associated Structures has accepted the aesthetic design of the proposed vehicular bridges. But how about the farmers' views? Mr. Lai? Well, they don't have any particular views on the bridge. So how about the appearance of the bridge and aesthetic design as well as visual impact? They haven't said anything about that, no. And about the large-scale road, for that linking to Fancam Road, now you have one lane in each direction. So for this this large-scale road, would it lead to the eviction of farmers and residents by the landowners? For the existing Chilking Road is a two-lane dual road, and in the future, in phase 2, we will expand it up to Fancam Road. If you look at enclosure 2, we will expand the Chilking Road section. It falls under phase 2 of the Agri Park. So for phase 2 of Agri Park, we will resume land for the park. This is what we will do in phase 2. Well, I'll ask some more questions later. Claudia Mo, I want to ask about the production targets. I don't really understand. So what types of crops will be planted? And how about the quantity? You say you won't force the farmers to plant certain things, and you will discuss with them, and then you will come to an agreement. And the tenancy will last for 5 years. You hope to have a harmonious relationship with them. Can you cite an example? Supposedly, I'm very good at growing lychee trees. I already have some lychee trees. I farm here. I have some lychee trees. And I'm also very good at growing tomato and bitter melon. But will you tell me that, well, there are too many lychee trees, so I don't care about your lychee trees, and there are a lot of farmers planting tomatoes and bitter melons. Would you force me to grow other crops? Maybe Mr. Ma can answer the questions. These are technical issues. Mr. Ma. Well, for these targets, first of all, well, the farmers can choose the crops that they want to plant. Now, if they like to plant certain crops or they're good at growing certain things, then they definitely have a choice. So we won't be very rigid. We won't say that, oh, you have to grow 1 ton of lychee. So we will look at the farming model. Is it organic farming or is just routine farming? And then we'll set production targets with them, and we will also provide them with technical support. And if the weather is bad or there are pest problems, then we will try to make adjustments. We will not be very rigid. If they cannot reach the production goals and if they underperform, we won't punish them. When we will provide technical support to them. You are saying then you will look at the way of farming. Is it organic farming or inorganic farming? So would you regard organic farming as a better way of farming, and would you encourage organic farming? Do you think it's more environmentally friendly and it's a healthier way of production? Well, for organic farming, maybe the yield will be less because there are a lot of restrictions concerning their productions. But would you encourage organic farming? Do you think this is something good? Well, we would encourage environmentally friendly farming methods. So no matter whether it's organic or inorganic farming, you will treat them the same. Yes, we will allow the farmers to choose. We would provide them with technical support so that the yield can be better. Well, you are providing technical support. It's totally free, right? Yes, it's for free. How about equipment? Well, we would introduce advanced equipments into Hong Kong and we will lend them the equipments. So if the equipments are damaged, do they have to pay you back? If they do not do it on purpose, they don't have to pay. So we don't have a lot of time left. How many more people would like to ask questions? We'll draw a line here. We will have 陳亮道章、Alvin Young、何俊宇、Eddie Chu. I don't think we can end the discussion of this item today, and on the 2nd of July we will continue with the discussion of this item, and then later on we will handle the 37E motion. Alvin Young, I want to know more about these meetings. So after we answer all the questions, we'll end the meeting. Yes, we will do that. Well, for this park, I support the concept of it. Well, agriculture is deteriorating in Hong Kong. Our agricultural products are less and less. And now fallow farmland accounts for 85% of all our farmlands. This is really a serious problem. Well, local vegetables accounted for majority of the vegetables on Hong Kong markets, but now it's dropped to 1 or 2%. So I hope that the agri park can help local production. I hope our vegetables can be grown locally in a sustainable manner. Other than this agri park, I also would like to ask other questions. The government is advocating a new agriculture policy. You are saying that there are agriculture priority areas. So how can you protect the active farmlands? so that farmers can continue to farm. This may not be directly related to the agri-park, but this is a relevant issue. So what's happening to the agriculture priority areas? The government has hired a consultant to look into this. That is how we can set up such priority areas. Well, the consultant has also taken some examples from overseas for our reference. They are looking at appropriate sites for such purposes, and they are putting forward some proposals as to how to entice landowners to lease their land to farmers. And they will also come up with plans as to how we can protect our existing farmlands. It will take time. They are now looking at overseas experiences. They would give us some case studies. Later on, when we get results from them, we will consult stakeholders. So it will take 2 to 3 more years. And then we will conduct a comprehensive consultation. So what you've been saying sounds good, but it will take another 2 to 3 years because now our farmland is dwindling and we will have less and less farmland. Can you come up with an interim report as soon as possible? You should have measures to entice landowners to lose their farmland to farmers. Otherwise, our farmers are being evicted all the time by the development of their farmlands.
Well, the consultants are earnestly carrying out their project. We need to consider quite a large number of factors and also quite complex. So we do need more time to carry a detailed study. Well, the way to procrastinate it and wait till next term government. I'm sorry, time's up. Shall we come back in 2 days' time?